You're a pleasure. You're easy. I want to apologize for coming on your show with my white jacket. They don't like that on television. My black shirt, my white jacket. Bringing out my own folding chair. And being on the right. You're not used to.
At 99 years old, Mel Brooks isn't just a comedy legend. He's one of the last real witnesses to Hollywood's golden era of morals and loyalty. His bond with Rob Reiner went way deeper than the glitz of showbiz. Mel literally changed Rob's diapers, saw him take his first steps, fall, rise, and turn into one of the biggest names in Hollywood history. So when the shocking news broke that Rob and his wife had been found murdered in their own home, and their troubled, addiction-stricken son Nick was named the prime suspect, Mel couldn't believe it. Something felt off. Too many details didn't match what he knew about Rob's life in those final days. Now, for the first time, Mel Brooks is breaking his silence, ready to expose what Hollywood desperately tried to bury. The truth he's hinting at could leave the whole industry shaken. Before the tragedy, Mel had noticed Rob acting strange during their last few meetings, paranoid, secretive, like a man being watched. That's when Mel started to realize this was no simple family tragedy. There was something darker beneath the surface.
This speaker, megaphone, is bullhorn. So I said, well, what the hell? They're cut off. They're probably starving. And well, let's give them a treat.
For decades, Mel had known Rob like a son. Their bond wasn't just built on fame, it was built on trust, private talks, family dinners, and deep loyalty. Mel had seen Rob grow up in Carl Reiner's shadow, stumble through early failures, and then rise to become one of Hollywood's most powerful directors. But in those final weeks, Mel sensed something that could have saved Rob if only someone had listened. That kind of closeness meant Mel never sugarcoated anything with Rob. If something felt off, he said it straight. And in those final years, something felt deeply wrong. During their last visits, Mel saw the change the moment he walked in. Rob couldn't sit still anymore. He'd pace around the room, check his phone non-stop, whisper mid-sentence like someone afraid of being overheard. His face told the whole story. This wasn't exhaustion from work or stress from directing. This was the look of a man under pressure, watching his back every second. Finally, Mel couldn't take it anymore and called him out on it. Rob didn't dodge the question this time. He leaned in close and said quietly, "Nick's back." Nick Reiner had returned to the Brentwood home after yet another failed attempt to get clean, and Rob didn't call it a reunion, he called it a situation. The atmosphere at home was tense. Nick had started using again, but it wasn't just the drugs, his anger had grown darker. He accused his parents of ruining his life, said they'd stolen his future, even claimed they were hiding money from him. His obsession with inheritance, power, and betrayal had reached a dangerous peak, and it terrified Rob. Then Rob dropped a bombshell he'd never admitted before. He told Mel he'd started locking his bedroom door at night. That single confession changed everything. The air in the room went cold. Mel didn't respond with sympathy. He was furious. He looked Rob straight in the eye and told him, "That's not family anymore. That's fear. And fear in your own house means the line's been crossed." It wasn't just tension, it was danger. Mel saw it clear as day and told Rob straight up, "You need to get Nick out of that house." He begged him to call the authorities, to stop thinking patience could fix something that was clearly spiraling out of control. But Rob couldn't do it.
It's very nice. I go into, like, I don't know, a young area like the mall and, you know, the promenade and in Santa Monica, and there'd be a bunch of young kids, and sometimes they scream, "Spaceball rules!" I mean, you know.
Isn't that?
It's very nice, you know.
He didn't deny that things were bad. He just couldn't face the alternative. "If I throw him out," Rob said quietly, "he dies on the street." Mel didn't even pause. His reply hit hard. "And if you keep him, someone dies in that house." The words hung in the air like a warning Rob didn't want to hear. Rob didn't argue the logic. He argued the heart. He told Mel that Michelle couldn't bear to abandon their son, that love meant staying, even when it tore you apart. Mel later said that was when he realized Rob had already made his choice. Love had blinded him to the danger. Months later, the nightmare Mel feared came true. Late that night, Rob called him from inside the house. His tone was calm but filled with urgency. Mick was spiraling again, ranting about money, the will, and how his parents were trying to cut him off. Mel could hear the chaos in the background and told Rob, "Leave, get in the car and come here right now." But Rob refused. His voice broke as he said, "I can't leave Michelle. She's with him. If I go, he'll turn it all on her." Rob Reiner stayed, knowing exactly how bad things were, choosing to protect his wife instead of himself. That heartbreaking decision cost him his life. It was the last time Mel Brooks ever heard his voice. And for Mel, that call wasn't a shock. It was the confirmation of a fear that had haunted him for years. That fear Mel carried wasn't born out of gossip or hindsight. It came from a pattern he saw since Nick Reiner was just a kid. Long before the addiction, the rehab stays, or the police reports, Mel had already noticed something about Nick that chilled him to the core. He saw danger in that boy long before anyone dared to admit it. Mel Brooks never thought Nick was just a troubled kid. From the start, he sensed something different, something darker. This wasn't normal teenage rebellion or mischief. It was volatility, pure and raw. Whenever Nick got frustrated, he didn't pout or storm off. He exploded. Mel could still remember the scenes decades later, the slamming doors, the shattered objects, and the way his anger took over entire rooms, forcing adults to bend around it just to keep the peace. What haunted Mel wasn't one meltdown, it was the pattern that followed every time. Nick would blow up, and instead of being held accountable, everyone rushed to calm him down. If Nick raged, Rob and Michelle would soothe him. If he demanded, they'd adjust. Slowly, Mel realized that Nick wasn't learning boundaries, he was learning power. He watched the family dynamic shift in real time. Conversations grew tense and careful. Every word became a gamble. Requests were whispered instead of spoken. Everyone tiptoed around Nick, not because he was fragile, but because upsetting him meant chaos. Mel once told Rob straight up, "Nick's learning something dangerous, man. Pressure works." That was the truth Rob didn't want to face. As Nick got older, that same volatility hardened. It didn't fade, it evolved. Addiction didn't create the aggression, it magnified it. And Mel knew then that if nothing changed, one day that storm inside Nick would destroy everything in its path. Mel couldn't ignore how Nick talked to his parents whenever he was using. It wasn't begging, it was blaming. He didn't ask for help, he demanded it. He spoke in cold absolutes, like his life was one long list of debts that everyone else owed him. "You ruined my chances. You owe me. This is yours to fix." That was how Nick talked, and Mel recognized that tone instantly. He'd seen it before in Hollywood, people who twisted entitlement into victimhood, who believed the world owed them something just for suffering. But what truly terrified Mel was how Nick reacted when things didn't go his way. His anger didn't fade, it grew. He'd obsess over every slight, replay every argument, push harder until someone finally broke. And every time they gave in, he learned the same toxic lesson: pressure wins. Then came the guest house setup, a move that made Mel's stomach turn. To outsiders, it looked like a caring solution. Nick had his own space, some privacy, some peace. But Mel saw through it. It wasn't help, it was avoidance dressed up as compassion. Nick was close enough for his parents to watch him, but far enough to avoid daily fights. He was fully supported, yet completely unaccountable. Mel warned Rob, his voice sharp. "He's not being helped, he's being trained. You're teaching him that control gets rewarded." And then came the night that proved Mel right, the infamous Conan O'Brien party. Nick crashed conversations, cut people off, inserted himself where he wasn't wanted, and even argued with Rob in front of everyone. The energy shifted fast. When someone mentioned calling the police, Mel saw what happened next. Authority backed down. Once again, Nick's fury ruled the room, and everyone else just stepped aside. By that point, Mel wasn't asking if Rob was in danger anymore. He was wondering how much longer Rob could take it. What had started as instability had turned into control. Nick wasn't just spiraling from addiction anymore. He was running the household through fear. The rage, the manipulation, the endless tension, it had all built towards something violent, and Mel knew it. So when the knives were found, Mel wasn't shocked. He was horrified but not surprised. In his mind, that violence had been brewing for years, rehearsed through every outburst that no one ever stopped. When Rob finally confessed that he was scared of his own son, Mel felt the weight of the truth hit him hard. This wasn't a family issue anymore. It was a full-blown threat, and Mel knew exactly who stood in the line of fire. But by the time he made his final warning, it was already too late. Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Reiner, were gone. The story that Mel had feared for years had reached its brutal end. Nick Reiner was taken into custody under constant watch, officially charged in connection with the double homicide of his parents. In court, he appeared wearing a suicide prevention smock, spoke only when required, and entered no plea, his silence saying more than words ever could. His situation was dire, both mentally and legally. Now, Nick lives his days inside a cold, structured system, monitored by guards instead of family, surrounded by walls that don't bend to his anger or charm. The days of manipulation and intimidation are over. Forensic evidence, psychiatric evaluations, and courtroom scrutiny are now his reality. Whatever world Nick once controlled through threats and guilt has crumbled, replaced by one ruled by consequences. And as for Mel Brooks, his decision to finally speak wasn't about revenge or attention. After the tragedy, he kept quiet because he didn't want Rob's entire life to be reduced to a headline. But now, that silence feels like betrayal. Mel knows that staying quiet didn't protect Rob's memory, it only let the truth get buried deeper. That silence didn't just hide the truth, it erased it. But now, Mel Brooks has broken that silence for good. He doesn't believe Rob Reiner died because he was careless or blind. He believes Rob died because he loved too deeply, because he thought compassion could calm chaos and patience could fix what danger had already poisoned. Mel is furious at the so-called professionals who told Rob and Michelle that Nick wasn't dangerous, just ill. In Mel's eyes, those people were paid to downplay reality, to dress danger in soft medical terms, to turn warnings into treatment plans. They told Rob it was a disorder, but as Mel said privately, they never told him it could be lethal. At 99, Mel Brooks knows he's the last man standing from that circle, the final witness to a tragedy Hollywood wishes would fade away. But he refuses to let silence win again. He's speaking now because someone has to. And Mel's message cuts deep. You can't love violence out of a person. You can't throw money at recovery and expect miracles. And you can't confuse endurance with courage, because sometimes staying is what destroys you. Rob Reiner stayed in that house knowing the risk, not because of denial, but because of love for his wife. That choice, heartbreaking and human, is what defines both his death and his character. So now, the question Mel leaves us with burns bright. Was Rob Reiner's greatest strength, his capacity to love, the same thing that led to his destruction? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if this story made you pause, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more untold Hollywood truths that no one else dares to say out loud.